Tonight, making progress on poverty. Charities say fewer Scottish kids are living in deprivation here than in other parts of the UK, but warn it's still a big problem.
I grew up in Castlemilk. We didn't have food banks. We didn't have the pantry. And this is, we seem to be going backwards.
COVID and the cost of living crisis means more and more people are seeking help. Also making the headlines, Project Runway. More flights between Scottish airports and Heathrow as the UK government backs a third runway at the London airport.
Tonight's sport comes from Villa Park, where two former European champions, Celtic and Aston Villa, go head-to-head in the Champions League.
And welcome to the year of the wood snake. Scotland's Chinese community celebrates the new lunar year. I'm John Mackay. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. The Scottish Government insists it will meet its targets on cutting child poverty, despite figures predicting it will be far short by the end of the decade. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation is forecasting the rate will drop here by 2029, unlike other areas of the UK. However, it says there is still a long way to go towards the Scottish Government's key mission of eradicating child poverty altogether. Here's our political correspondent, Ewan Petrie.
This charity has been supporting families in one of Glasgow's most deprived areas for 50 years. Since COVID and the cost of living crisis, they've seen more and more people seeking help.
It's absolutely horrendous what people are living in. We've had working parents come in and asking us if we've got clothes for the children.
When you hear politicians talking about eradicating child poverty, what does that make you think?
I think it sounds great. I really do. But they need to put it into action. Because the levels of child poverty is ridiculous. When I grew up, and I grew up in Castlemilk, we didn't have food banks. We didn't have the pantry. And we seem to be going backwards instead of moving forwards.
The Joseph Rowntree Foundation predicts the rate of child poverty in Scotland will fall almost 2% by 2029. That means it would continue to have the lowest levels in the UK and would be the only area to see a drop. But that's still well short of the Scottish Government's target of 1 in 10 being in poverty by the following year.
For me, that is unachievable. In the current state of crisis that we're living in, we're in a crisis of cost of living. Everything is more expensive. Parents have so much pressure on them. And the services are being reduced, hours are being cut, funding's being cut.
If it wasn't for Home Start and another mental health charity that I'm with, I wouldn't be here.
Elizabeth turned to this Home Start project after the death of her partner during COVID. As well as emotional support, she's also getting help with her finances.
It's a struggle, especially when obviously your kids are getting older, they want more expensive things and things crop up, but I manage.
The Scottish Government believes it can still meet its ambitions.
Well, we're determined to make those targets because the important work that the Scottish Government is doing, whether it's through the Scottish Child Payment, the expansion in breakfast clubs, and the work we're doing in schools, does support children and families. So we know that we have achieved a lot. We've supported those families. You hear about the impact that the Scottish Child Payment, for example, is making, but we know that there's more to do.
The UK Government says an increase in the minimum wage and reforms to universal credit are also helping lift more children out of poverty.
And Ewan joins us now. Ewan, we've been hearing about attempts to reduce child poverty for many years now, so how much progress has been made?
Well, on the surface, these figures are positive, but for some years now, there has been a gap between Scotland and the rest of the UK when it comes to child poverty rates. That's mainly down to the lower housing costs here. But this research points to that gap increasing over the coming years, and it says that's down to the Scottish Child Payment kicking in, the promise to mitigate the two-child benefit cap. That's a promise from the Scottish Government in its budget, which will kick in from next year. But as the Foundation points out, it's a bit early for the Scottish Government to be hanging out the bunting and celebrating. It's still well short of its target for 2030, and these are very expensive policies. So there's still a lot of work needed to be done by both governments if that target's to be achieved.
Ewan, thank you. The UK government has backed a third runway for Heathrow Airport as part of a plan to boost economic growth. It's expected to result in thousands more flights connecting Scottish airports to London. But the Scottish government has questioned whether the plan will benefit Scotland. Our Westminster correspondent Paris Goutsianis joins us. Paris, what's the reaction been?
Well, John, this question of a third runway for Heathrow has been a decades-long saga, a sort of monument to the idea that Britain just can't build things anymore. So there are plenty of people welcoming today's announcement, especially some Scottish airports, which will see a huge boost to their connectivity with the rest of the world. Indeed, the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, said that whisky and salmon from Scotland are actually Heathrow's two biggest exports. But environmentalists say that more air travel is the last thing the climate needs, and even though the Scottish Government previously backed Heathrow expansion, it's now joining unions in questioning why Grangemouth isn't getting some of that investment.
The last full-length runway in Britain was built in the 1940s. No progress in 80 years. Why is this so damaging? It's because Heathrow is at the heart of the UK's openness as a country.
Well, there wasn't much mention of Scotland in her speech, apart from the reference in relation to Heathrow Airport, which is in London and the South East. Our interest is, what does this speech mean for Grangemouth? What does this speech mean for Scotland's industries? At the end of the day, there is no UK growth without Scotland. There is no meeting our climate change targets without Scotland, and we want to see more of a focus on Scotland.
There is more for Scotland in this growth plan. Glasgow will get some investment through a national wealth fund, but much of the money is destined for the wealthy southeast of England. The Chancellor says she wants to turn the area between Oxford and Cambridge, with its universities and high-tech companies, into a British Silicon Valley. So there will be some in Scotland asking why southeast England gets a new Silicon Valley while Grangemouth goes the way of Ravenscraig.
Paris at Westminster, thank you. The Bank of Scotland is shutting another 14 branches across the country. Alexandria, Barrhead, Bishopbriggs, Corstorphine West, Wester Hailes, Helensburgh, Kirkintilloch and Uddingston are all marked for closure. The Bank of Scotland's owners, Lloyds, say it's because more people are switching to digital banking. A mother and daughter have been cleared of killing a Fife security guard who suffered a cardiac arrest whilst trying to remove them from a department store. 62-year-old Bill Ireland collapsed and died at Rejects in Kirkcaldy 2 years ago. He had intervened when 37-year-old Nicola Gordon tried to leave with stolen goods. Gordon and her mother, 59-year-old Teresa Gordon, were accused of assaulting Mr Ireland during the incident. At the High Court in Edinburgh, they were acquitted with not proven verdicts. The Clydeside Expressway in Glasgow remains closed westbound to all traffic after a pedestrian was hit by a lorry near Anderson Cross. Emergency services were called out just after 1:30 this afternoon, and diversions are causing long tailbacks in the area. A ban on pavement parking is now in force in Glasgow, with drivers facing fines of £100. People with visual impairments told STV News they're happy with the change. Vanessa Taff reports.
Good, ghetto.
With her harness safely secured, Maureen is ready to guide Carlos around his neighbourhood. Navigating partially blocked pavements is a challenge for both of them, especially when forced to step onto the road.
There was a van parked across a pavement and I had to go round onto the road. There was an electric car coming straight at me. I hadn't noticed, I couldn't hear it. However, thanks to the quick thinking of Maureen, my dog, she managed to pull me back in time before I walked out onto the road, which was quite incredible for me, quite a terrifying experience.
Edinburgh became the first city in Scotland to enforce pavement parking bans, and campaigners have hailed it as a success.
The decision there a year ago to introduce pavement parking legislation has been a real game changer in terms of getting out and about independently, safely and with confidence.
After a bedding-in period, the fine for parking on the pavement will be £100. That'll come down to £50 if you pay within 2 weeks. Glasgow City Council say there will only be signs where there is a formal exemption to the rules, but those could vary from street to street.
From today, you'll be issued with a warning if you park on the pavement on this section of the street. But on the very same street, the council are still weighing up whether the ban is going to come into force. Now that's because they're considering whether, with cars parked on both sides of the street, there'll be enough room for things like emergency services vehicles to pass by.
In areas like the south side of the city, it can often be a tight squeeze. But some drivers are concerned the ban will make parking even more difficult than it already is.
You very rarely get a space, and now, as of recently as well, actually, they've added in bins like onto the main roads on where the parking spots used to be. So it's quite brutal, to be honest with you, to get a parking spot, especially on the main street and stuff. You need to kind of come into a side street and find a curb to park on. That's the best solution.
And Maz isn't the only one who has concerns.
The streets are just too narrow and there's too many cars, so I'm not quite... I agree with it in principle, but in practice it's not really practical.
There's no parking facilities for the parents, so, and the parking wardens are go around shawling, so they're just going to ticket you, so maybe they just try to make more money.
Fines will begin in mid-February, parking the problem, but just for now. Vanessa Taff, STV News in Glasgow.
Time now for sport, and Rahman is at Villa Park for tonight's Champions League match.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith New Year's Sale.
A very good evening from Villa Park, where tonight Celtic face Aston Villa in their final league phase match in this season's Champions League. When the draw was made back in August, this was one of the standout fixtures for the Celtic fans as their team, the champions of Scotland, take on Aston Villa from the English Premier Leagues, both clubs having won this competition when it was the European Cup. Well, this tie is set up rather nicely. Both have qualified to the playoff stages, but one of them could progress directly to the last 16 tonight. To do so, they need to win and hope that other results go in their favour this evening. Well, there will be just over 2,000 Celtic fans inside the stadium tonight. There were many, many more in the city of Birmingham earlier, as Ronnie Charters now reports.
There's certainly lots to be happy about for these Celtic fans at the moment. A Champions League campaign to remember and a Battle of Britain showdown to come this evening against Aston Villa. Thousands of fans making the trip to Birmingham and already in the party mood.
Hopefully we can get a result tonight. Do Scotland proud, but brilliant, great atmosphere.
We're just in this fan zone enjoying ourselves. What a day.
Been class, all the songs and all, like just it's like away days, you can't beat them in Europe, like just take over anywhere we go, so it's unreal.
Looking forward to a good game tonight. It's going to be exciting, but I think Sarah's going to do in chattels to do it.
It's good to be down here. The atmosphere will make it special. Hopefully if we win it'll be even better.
Big ask, massive ask tonight. If we can get a draw, we should take the positives out of that.
For Brendan Rodgers and his players, the late dramatic win over Young Boys secured their place in the playoffs, making it all to play for tonight.
Our job is done in terms of getting to the into the 24, but it's certainly not complete. And this is the last of the group stage games, and we come here. It's a beautiful pitch, it's a great arena, so we want to come and play to the best level that we can.
This is the current standings ahead of the final round of fixtures in the Champions League this evening. Celtic sitting in 18th spot with tonight's opponents Aston Villa in 9th. To make the top 8, the Parkhead club must do the job in Birmingham and hope other results go their way.
Right now we did very well at this stage, and we are really happy with our progress until here, but yeah, we have that opportunity and we'll try to make that happen.
And for the Premier League side, they're expecting a raucous atmosphere as the two teams go head to head.
They want to come and make a statement at Villa Park and trying to impress people. It's going to be a really hard game, intense game. I'm sure the Celtic fans will bring their atmosphere, but I know Villa fans are going to bring a great atmosphere and it's going to be a really good game.
So it's fair to say this Champions League campaign has brought more highs than lows so far for these Celtic fans, and that's why they arrive here in Birmingham full of confidence and optimism. They've brought the colour, they've brought the noise. It is now all set for a Champions League classic. Ronnie Charters, STV Sport in Birmingham.
Well, it will be a weekend Celtic team that takes on Aston Villa tonight. No Cameron Carter-Vickers, he's injured. No Daisen Maeda, he's suspended. And Kyogo Furuhashi has, of course, left the club. Kick-off here is at 8 o'clock. Well, while Celtic are in action tonight, tomorrow night, Rangers face Union Saint-Gilloise in the Europa League. Ahead of that match, Philippe Clement has been speaking to the media and discussing Chefty's future. He has been linked with a possible move to Chelsea. Here's Jamie Borthwick.
He's impressed since moving to Ibrox in the summer, and with reports surfacing that clubs, including Chelsea, are keeping tabs on Chefty, his boss insists that Rangers is the right place for him.
If he makes a normal evolution, what he's been doing now, I think one day he will be ready for that. But for the moment, it's too early, and I think this is a really good place for him to develop. So he's totally not busy with all these rooms.
Jack Butland has reclaimed the number 1 jersey since recovering from an internal bleed on his leg, but the goalkeeper suffered a nightmare moment in last week's Europa League trip, punching the opening goal into his own net against Manchester United.
So the goal goes in, you're in sort of disbelief in that moment, but there was still however long left on the clock, and you always know there's an opportunity, A, for your team to get back in it, but B, you might be called upon again and you've got to do the next thing, right? So, like I said, that's the life of being a goalkeeper. You could be the hero, the villain, or you can be both in the same game, and that's just the reality of it.
Injured stars Václav Černý and John Souttar were seen back in training this morning, but Clement was in no mood to give any team news away ahead of facing Union Saint-Gilloise.
It's a decisive game now. Last game in this group phase, so I don't want to give my Belgian friends all the tools. They need to work also a little bit, like me. I know they will not give me all the tools also before the game. So you guys saw some things in the training, that some guys were back and some guys were doing individual work, and the rest we will see tomorrow.
And on the eve of the match, Rangers have confirmed the appointment of Issam Charai as Clement's new assistant manager. Jamie Borthwick, STV Sport.
And we'll be live at Ibrox tomorrow night. Let's switch from football to rugby news now. And Scottish Rugby's new Chief Executive, Alex Williamson, says the governing body's precarious finances can be resolved under his leadership. Scottish Rugby has reported more than £20 million in losses over the last 2 years. But Williamson, who took up the post last week, believes there are reasons for optimism that they can plug their financial black hole.
I think there's a very clear path to a sustainable, long-term sustainable business. Clearly there have been some challenges. My review over my very early part of the role is to say that there's plenty of reasons to be positive about the financial state of Scottish Rugby and our ability to get after the projects that we need to get after. But we have to do it in a pragmatic way.
STV Sport, sponsored by the C.R. Smith New Year's Sale.
Well, that is just about all of your sport for me live from Villa Park tonight. In less than 2 hours, Celtic will face Aston Villa in the Champions League. After that heavy defeat to Borussia Dortmund earlier in the campaign, Celtic have gone on a 5-game unbeaten run. Can they save their best performance for tonight? Kick-off is at 8.
Enjoy, Rahman. Now Sean is here with the weather forecast.
An icy start to the day will give way to a series of oohs and ahs. TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Very good evening to you. Now, there is a named storm on the chart here behind me, but we don't need to worry about it because it's been named by the Spanish and the French because that's where it's heading, the Bay of Biscay. But for us, the weather, pretty quiet over the next couple of days. We will start to see more rain coming in from the Atlantic, I expect later on Saturday and also on Sunday, but generally over the next couple of days, the weather should be pretty quiet and largely dry for many of us. A lot of dry weather around during this evening and tonight, but we've got a good scattering of showers that are going to develop around the west coast and the Hebrides through this evening and tonight, becoming quite frequent through the night, and also pushing a wee bit further east into mainland Argyll and Bute, around Glasgow, and also Ayrshire later on. Chilly night to come across eastern parts, and the risk of some ice on some of the higher routes with temperatures fairly close to freezing where we've got those showers. Now, showers still affecting Kintyre, the Inner Hebrides tomorrow morning, but most of those through the morning easing away. And look at that, a pretty blank map for you in the afternoon. That's great news, of course, because it means there's going to be a lot of dry and bright weather tomorrow and light winds as well. OK, it's not going to be warm. It's going to be still quite cool after a chilly start to the day. Temperatures 4 to 6 degrees. Sun just getting a tiny, tiny little bit stronger. So hopefully not feeling too bad in the afternoon. Sunshine tomorrow. So another fine day to come. Tomorrow night, though, we'll see outbreaks of rain and hail snow coming in. We could be left over with some showers around on Friday. More persistent rain spreading in from the west. Windier weather on Saturday. Bye-bye.
TUI sponsors STV Weather.
Celebrations are underway as billions of people across the globe celebrate the Chinese New Year and welcome in the Year of the Snake. At Glasgow's Wing Hong Elderly Centre, a traditional lunch was held. Tara Fitzpatrick was there.
Marked with tradition and performance by billions across the world. The Chinese New Year is said to bring peace and prosperity to all who celebrate. At this Glasgow community centre, the occasion was marked with family, friends and a lot of good food.
Happy New Year, Year's a Snake. We're really excited to join the Wing Hong Centre, so celebrate with all the people.
Happy New Year, Year of the Snake, the best of the year. Okay, everybody, good health.
The new Chinese New Year is bring everyone good luck, good health, good wealth to everybody. And then this is the decoration for Chinese New Year. I'm very happy to see it today and make everyone successful and strong love.
The group were also paid a visit from the Chinese god of wealth, who is said to bestow good fortune for the year to come.
Chinese New Year is the most important festival in the Chinese culture. It marks the beginning of a new lunar year, and also it's a time for family reunion, honoring our ancestors, and most important, welcome the good fortune ahead.
2025 bids farewell to the dragon, ushering in the Year of the Snake, the zodiac animal known for intelligence and intuition. Festivities will be held in Scotland and across the globe over the next week. Tara Fitzpatrick, STV News, Glasgow.
Happy New Year. We'll leave you with pictures of another celebration tonight, the Up Festival in Shetland, where they've been burning a replica Viking galley. From all of us, good night.